Imagine this. You're sitting in a quiet office in London. Outside, the city is moving like it always does. Buses, people, noise, life. But inside, something very different is happening. A lawyer slides a document across the table. It's not a normal business deal. It's not a property contract. It's something far more subtle. A company is being created, not in the UK, not in Europe, but in a place thousands of miles away, where taxes are almost zero and ownership can disappear behind layers of secrecy. You sign the paper, and just like that, your money is no longer where it used to be. Now, here's the twist. Nothing you just did is necessarily illegal. And that's exactly what makes this story so powerful. Because this is the real story behind the Britain's offshore tax scandal. At its core, the system is surprisingly simple. If you earn money in the UK, you're expected to pay tax on it. That's how governments fund everything, from hospitals to roads to schools. But what if, technically, your money wasn't in the UK anymore? What if your assets were owned by a company based somewhere else? Somewhere like the British Virgin Islands, or the Cayman Islands, or Bermuda. Places where taxes are incredibly low or sometimes zero. This is where the offshore world begins. Let's break it down. Instead of owning something directly, like a house, a business, or an investment, you set up an offshore company to own it for you. On paper, the company is the owner, not you. And because that company exists in a low-tax jurisdiction, the profits it generates may not be taxed the same way they would be in Britain. So legally, you've shifted your financial position without physically moving anything at all. Now, multiply this by thousands of individuals, and then by multinational corporations. Suddenly, you're not looking at a small loophole, you're looking at a global system. But here's where Britain enters the picture in a much deeper way. Many of the world's most famous offshore financial centers are closely tied to the UK, the British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, Jersey, Guernsey. Some are British overseas territories, others are crown dependencies. They govern themselves in many ways, but they still maintain strong constitutional links to Britain. And over time, they've developed a very specific role in the global economy. They've become hubs for offshore finance. Why? Because they offer three key things: low taxes, financial secrecy, and flexible regulation. This combination makes them incredibly attractive, not just for individuals, but for corporations and investors from all over the world. And because London is one of the biggest financial centers on Earth, it often acts as the gateway. Money flows in, gets structured, and then flows out again. For decades, most people had no idea how big this system really was. Then came the leaks. In 2016, a massive data leak shocked the world. Millions of confidential documents from a law firm in Panama were exposed. Journalists from across the globe began analyzing the data. This became known as the Panama Papers, and what they revealed was staggering. World leaders, celebrities, business tycoons, all connected through offshore companies. Some were using them legally, others were accused of hiding wealth or avoiding taxes. But one thing became clear: this wasn't rare, it was normal. And Britain's offshore network kept appearing again and again. Then came more revelations: the Paradise Papers in 2017, the Pandora Papers in 2021. Each leak peeled back another layer of the system, and each time the same pattern emerged: a global web of companies, trusts, and financial structures, often linked through jurisdictions connected to Britain. Now, it's important to understand something. Not all offshore activity is illegal. There's a critical difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance. Tax evasion is breaking the law, hiding income, lying to authorities.
Tax avoidance, on the other hand, is about using legal methods to reduce how much tax you pay. Most offshore structures fall into this second category. They're carefully designed by experts to stay within the rules. But here's the real issue: the rules themselves. Because while these strategies may be legal, they create a system that doesn't treat everyone equally. A regular person earning a salary has very limited options. Their tax is deducted automatically. There are no offshore companies, no complex structures, just a paycheck and a tax bill. But for the ultra-wealthy, it's different. They can afford teams of lawyers, accountants, and advisors, people who understand the system inside out, people who know exactly how to move money in ways that reduce tax exposure. So, what happens? The burden shifts. Governments collect less from those who have the most and rely more on everyone else. And the impact isn't just local, it's global. In developing countries, the effects can be even more severe. When wealth is generated through natural resources, labor, or business, and then moved offshore, governments lose revenue they desperately need. Money that could fund education, healthcare, infrastructure. Instead, it disappears into a system that's legal but deeply controversial. Back in the UK, the effects show up in unexpected places, like housing. In London, thousands of high-value properties are owned by offshore companies, not individuals, not families, companies. So it creates a strange reality. Homes that are technically owned but often sit empty. Investments rather than living spaces. And because demand is driven by global wealth, not local need, prices rise, making it harder for ordinary people to afford homes. So why hasn't this system been shut down? The answer is complicated. On one hand, there have been efforts to increase transparency. The UK has introduced measures to track beneficial ownership. Some offshore jurisdictions now share financial information with tax authorities. There have been crackdowns on illegal activity. But on the other hand, the system itself generates enormous economic value. Financial services tied to offshore networks contribute billions. London benefits from being at the center of global finance. And tightening regulations too aggressively could push money and business elsewhere. So, governments walk a fine line, trying to regulate without losing competitiveness. And then there's the issue of politics. From time to time, investigations have revealed connections between political figures and offshore structures. These links don't always imply wronging, but they do raise questions about transparency, about accountability, and about whether those in power are truly motivated to change the system. Meanwhile, the offshore world continues to evolve. As regulations tighten in one place, new loopholes appear in another. New jurisdictions emerge. New financial instruments are created. The system adapts.